A reading from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 2, verses 7 through 15. Then Herod secretly called for the wise travelers and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word, so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. Now after they had left, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and flee to Egypt, and remain there until I tell you, for Herod is about to search for the child and destroy him." Then Joseph got up, took the child and his mother by night, and went to Egypt, and remained there until the death of Herod.
Hello, everybody. Hi. My name is Hope. I'm a member of this church. My pronouns are she and they. And for this year, I am serving as moderator of this congregation. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Will you all join me in a moment of prayer to get the sermon movement going? All right, let us pray. Holy God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of each and every one of our hearts be a treasure, be a gift, be a blessing in your sight. O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. So the story we just read, and yes, if you've heard it before, that makes sense. It's probably come up before, but it's still the season after Epiphany, and it's still not Lent yet. So we're still kind of in the church season around the year calendar when we still got this story fresh in our minds, when we're still in that journey on our way home. And the folks that we heard about in the scripture today who visited Jesus, they're the wise ones, the Magi, and they don't get a huge amount of attention. So as we think about them, I'm just going to offer that I am speculating right now. and you can be like, no, that's not how I read it, and that's cool. But when I've been looking at this passage and these folks who are able to go on this journey with treasure and then go home another way, I do notice that this may be a group with a fair amount of wealth, and it may be a group with a fair amount of education. And in that sense, it's a little bit easier to get on board and not in like a personal way. We're like, oh yeah, I can relate to being wealthy. Not that as much as we as a group can connect to the idea of having wealth to care for and having education to care for. So we've got this journey, and we're following the Magi back home. And presumably they would chart a trail. Initially they would chart a trail that's comfortable and fast. That's my assumption, because that's how I would do it, to get home. However, they realized that the way they were going was going to benefit the empire and harm the ones for whom they care. So the Magi set aside their original trail, and they found a new way. And I imagine that this new way was a little bit longer and maybe a little bit less comfortable. But I also like to imagine that they took some stops at the beach, maybe. Maybe they found a nice dessert shop. Maybe they even found a nice resonance concert sort of thing to go to, or a nice fun show along the way. They found their way home a longer way, a different way, and it became their way. This past Advent season, in the world of pop culture, we've been introduced to a new film called Encanto. Encanto tells this magical and musical story of the Madrigal family. In just the first minute of the film, we're introduced to the matriarch of the family, Abuela Alma, and her backstory in brief. And what we learn about Alma right off the bat is that her and her husband Pedro and their 3 young children, their 3 babies, they were forced to flee their home. And on their way, Pedro was lost, and in their darkest moment, they were given a miracle, which included magically protective abilities and a magical home with a lot of character. So part of the beauty of this opening scene is that it's portrayed in a very universal way. It's such a way that each person can connect with it on their own terms. And also, this setting has a very specific historical context. Based on the settings in this story in Encanto, we can tell that it takes place in the beginning of the 20th century in Colombia's Valle de Cocora. We know that the family is fleeing from the violence of the 1,000 Days War, and that the Encanto, the miracle, protects the family from the threat of displacement, a threat that still exists today. So fast forwarding a few decades into real life now, in 2018, I participated in a delegation from Pacific School of Religion. That's the seminary where I graduated from, and a group of 15 of us, we were allowed to travel from Berkeley to Colombia to participate in an act known as political accompaniment. The point of this action was, in short, to create visibility for Colombians who needed protection and for us to bear witness to the work that was happening. One of the communities that we bore witness to was called El Tamarindo, the Tamarind. They lived in a little farming area north of a city called Barranquilla, and they had established their land in the year 2000, and they were fleeing from violence, and they settled uncultivated, unclaimed land, and started crops, and they started livestock, and they started their families. And they found their home, but the value of this land near Barranquilla, Colombia, the value instantly skyrocketed one day, having to do with the United States' housing bubble. What happened was that our housing bubble here was needing a lot of concrete to build foundations. And there was a cement factory in Barranquilla, and they needed a bigger freeway to get more cement here for that housing bubble to get bigger and bigger. And the land there became too expensive for this campesino community. It was deemed too expensive. So by the time we visited El Tamarindo, they had lost their homes and they had lost their crops. And nonetheless, when they greeted us, they made a feast. They made Bible study, and we got to participate in, witness. They shared singing, we shared singing. The kids showed us this game called Uno, Dos, Tres, Carabasa. That was like, it was basically like just this 1, 2, 3, go, 1, 2, 3, pumpkin. We'd race and come back. It was, I don't understand the pumpkin, but it was this really sweet time. So we shared all that, and El Tamarindo, the family of El Tamarindo, they shared about what they had seen. They shared about bulldozers. They shared about quickly grabbing their treasures. They shared about needing to step up to take care of grandchildren in new ways. And they shared about turning their remaining crops into charcoal for short-term revenue. And finally, after all this time together, we had a dessert. It was a smoothie, kind of a fruit smoothie made from tamarind to remind us of El Tamarindo. So the community shared all of this. They gifted all of this to us, this cohort from PSR, from my seminary. They gifted all this to us, and they made one request. And the request was that we hold on to their stories. So after that day, my cohort and I, we continued to travel around Colombia for a while and eventually made our ways back home. And we also took some time to process, some time to sing, and also some time to dip our feet into a Caribbean beach. So we made our ways back home. I found my way home, but different, I think. When I got back here, I was differently aware of the immense poverty in the world, the immense wealth, and the way they affect each other. It's like I was awoken from a dream. The empire's mind-numbing illusion over my life was disrupted, and the privilege of comfort became suspect. So our time with El Tamarindo, it broke my heart. But in a good way, I think. I think my heart actually needed to be broken open a little bit to hold what I was seeing. And as a congregation, we are not exactly the Magi. We are not exactly traveling to Colombia. And yet, as a journey, as a congregation, we are on a journey together, and we've got a way home. In the past few years, we've become a community in dispersion. We've become a community in diaspora. And we're now a mix of virtual and in-person. We're trying to find and honor new ways of being together that meet our basic needs for safety while being responsive to our constant change and need for community. We're trying to figure out how to feel the comfort of closeness while also being responsive to each other's own risk and danger. And parts of our in-person campus are still waiting to be demolished, are still waiting to be rebuilt and to be renewed. So we're in community, in diaspora, trying to get home together. As Jean mentioned today, the home that we're trying to get back to, the home in the past isn't what we're going towards. Where we're coming from isn't enough for our future thriving together. We know that too. We can feel it. We know that absolute in-person worship doesn't work for all of our needs. We know that absolute virtual worship does not work for all of our needs. We know that our customary ways of putting an event on the calendar and expecting it to be there on that day, nope. We know, we're learning that the nuances of a present context are different. Not to mention, sometimes it's just plain hard to spend time together. So not only are we trying to get back home together in this building virtually in the future, not only are we trying to get back home together, we are trying to rebuild. And we're trying to reinvent home together. And I know that we're going to do it. I know that we'll make our home together. So as we do that, my hope for us is that as we make our way home together, we find ways that are a little bit indirect and a little bit uncomfortable, but manageably so. My hope is that as we rebuild and reinvent together, we bear witness to one another's stories as they are given, and we hold those stories safely, even if it means a little heartbreak, a kind of heartbreak that's surrounded by feasts and desserts and singing. The community, family, as we make our way home together, and we allow our hearts to break open even wider, may we find another way home. Amen.